Welcome to this episode of The Wolf and the Shepherd. Today we have returning with us Kordel France. Kordel, glad you could make the trip over from Dallas and come hang out with us today.
Max and Tristan, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. It's good to talk to you guys again.
Well, I wanted to get together today because you know you have regular...
Hang on. I forgot something.
Yes.
I just realized. I was supposed to bring my robot vacuum cleaner today so you could put AI into my robot vacuum cleaner and make it clean better. And you were supposed to also. You were supposed to remind me to do. Mine is too. It literally like drives by, messes on the floor, and I yell at it, and it doesn't listen to me.
Are you sure you're not confusing it with a dog?
Oh, well, both of them do.
Yeah, they're both small and round.
Yes, yeah. And the cat just ignores everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if you bring your Alexa or your Google Home with it, then we'll make it respond to voice commands too. So we'll take them together, and then
so I do have awesome. The Alexa to where I tell it, you know, Alexa vacuum the floor, and it will do that, but it just goes randomly around.
Oh, mine does as well. It goes like if it's a room, right? Instead of going up and down that room like you'd mow a yard, right? It goes round in a circle, pisses off over here, does a few steps, goes off over here, and it's like. You've got a battery power which lasts about, I think ours last about 80 minutes, 90 minutes.
Yeah, mine's
you're
90 minutes.
You're wasting 72 minutes of this, mate.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So that's
sorry to interrupt.
We got into
but I just realized as we were starting, I was supposed to bring that so Kordel could fix my vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
But
that just means there has to be a part 3.
Oh. Well. Could you imagine like bringing the vacuum cleaners in here and watching him just like disassemble everything, and then next thing you know, the thing is like washing the windows and everything. It's like, I didn't even know this thing could do that.
Well, be honestly, you had more of a functional investment into bringing yours in. I wanted to attach robot arms and knives on mine.
No, you've been watching that robot fighting show too much. I don't want mine to fight. I just literally don't want to vacuum the floor.
I do.
Because we know my wife isn't going to vacuum.
Right, that's true.
Yeah.
So, what I wanted to get together was exactly for this kind of thing, because there's so many talk shows where they just bullshit about sports or news, but it's very rarely you get 3 people together and just bullshit about technology, the future of tech, where it's going, all of the so-called new inventions such as the metaverse. Which
but hey, do not let out my $1 million idea that I gave Kordel just before we hit record.
Well,
because that's between us.
I think
Kordel's going to make this happen.
I think it's only worth about $40 at the moment.
That's $40 I didn't have before we started.
That is true.
Yeah.
But once you buy the domain name and host it and pay a couple of people on Fiverr to do all the heavy work for you, it's going to be gone.
Yeah, and now we know apparently we don't want to buy domains through GoDaddy.
No.
Although we need to be careful with that because we bought our domain through GoDaddy. And we don't want to piss them off.
Transfer it to somebody else.
I don't know how to do that.
Oh, okay.
That sounds difficult.
All right.
It sounds like a lot of work.
It is.
Yeah.
They try and sabotage it every step. I've tried to move domain names from GoDaddy before, and like the process moving from there is ridiculous compared to like some of the other hosters. You know, some of the others you can just do with a few clicks, submit a form, and it does it. But like GoDaddy, you know, they want you on the phone, you've got to fill out these forms. And then I think deliberately the first 1 or 2 interactions you have, something goes wrong. So they try and make it more of a pain in the ass.
So is that why they had Danica Patrick as a spokesmodel for him?
Right.
That's what fooled me into
right,
it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, well, finally a woman that can drive a car. And she's hot, so I'll believe anything she says.
Yeah, I just saw tits and thought, all right, GoDaddy. Yeah. Basic man.
Where did that name come from? Does anyone know?
I have no clue.
I don't know.
I have no idea.
I don't really want to theorize where it came from, actually.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to make it sound like, it's hard to theorize in a good sense, right? It's
right.
Like, there's so many names, and why would that one?
Yeah. But I tell you what, before we get into this technology thought, I think we need to let Kordel remind everybody his background and everything, why we're going to ask all these bizarre questions to him.
So
why
people know there's one person in the room who knows what they're talking about.
Exactly.
Right,
yeah. So remind everybody your background and all that good stuff.
Sure. Well, thank you again. And I'm So my background is in robotics and autonomous systems, primarily artificial intelligence. So I've worked on trying to make things fly or behave or act by themselves, right? Whether it's for, I worked for in the aerospace industry for a while and worked for a startup the last few years. We just exited, just got acquired. But my background's primarily in software and artificial intelligence.
Much better than us.
Yeah.
We're just podcasters.
Yeah. We own Xbox Series X's and play games online.
Yeah, and struggle with that.
Right. So, given your background, you probably know the answer to this question. How feasible is it to build a Terminator? Because if you've got something which doesn't have to discern between anything other than human and non-human, surely the recognition system should be pretty basic if it's killing everything organic. How difficult would it be to build a Terminator?
With today's technology or like 10 years down the road? Or?
Both.
Today's technology, we're not there yet. Where we're at right now is like, if we have systems that are very good in a narrow scope. So we have like cameras that can identify things better than a human. We have, chatbots that can convince you that they're not a chatbot because they can talk, they can converse really well. And we have things that work really well in certain domains, but not something that works together as a whole and that can reason. So like, if you have an AI camera, it's going to be able to detect all of these different people and crowds of people and maybe even pick out certain types of people, but it's not going to be able to understand really what's going on in a scene. It's not going to be able to understand, have comprehension of what it means for this type of occurrence to happen in the real world. That's where the gap is really reasoning. So if we can, fast forward for 20 years probably, where we have some engineering to actually work on that reasoning type stuff, then we're going to be able to, it's very feasible to build Terminator.
But what about what Elon's doing with the Tesla bot? I mean, that kind of looks close, not like a Terminator, right?
Not as much
looks
fun,
like
more helpful.
It looks like the what was her name from the Jetsons? The robot maid.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, Rosie. It's almost like that. Like it's the helper robot, like a C-3PO almost. I mean, it looks like Elon's getting close.
Yeah, I think so. For the first iteration of the Tesla bot, I think Elon's going to do it. I mean, he knocks everything out of the park pretty much. But I think it's going to be really a high-tech Roomba with arms. Like, we were just discussing before this how frustrated we get with the Roombas, right? Because they're not very smart yet, but they are helpful. And I think the Tesla bot to start is going to be helpful, but it's not going to be able to make decisions on its own accord while you're sitting on the couch. It's not going to be able to think about, how much it doesn't like you and what it's going to do to you when you go to sleep, right? It's not going to be able to have malicious intent because I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think anybody, including Tesla, is at the level yet where these robots have the ability to kind of make those sorts of reason logic about their head.
But you'd have to hard code any type of robot to have that rule number one, harm no human life, simply because any AI is going to come to the conclusion that we're a waste of space and basically a bacteria or a fungi on the face of the earth, and the earth would be better off if mankind was eliminated. So surely every step, that first rule has to be hardwired into any type of, AI, and then especially with machine learning, because it's going to come to that conclusion. Why am I serving this piece of shit sitting on the couch? They're not contributing anything to humanity. In fact, by my computations, I've decided the world would be better off without this fat piece of shit. So, right. And I'm not pointing at you because you're a fat piece of shit. It's just generally, and I'm looking at you. But, AI has to be, I guess, treated very carefully in that respect, because it is going to come to that logical conclusion. There's no escaping it.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree. And it really comes down to like what you program into the robot to seek for a reward. Like if it's seeking, like for example, if the reward for the robot is to maximize or how many tasks it does throughout the day, right? It's going to try to, or knock all of its chores off of its to-do list, right? It's going to try to do that. But if you give the robot a different reward, right, and it has a different concept of what it means to harm a human, maybe it's hardwired to say, it's programmed to say, or to interpret not to harm humans, but it doesn't know what harming means, right? Maybe, well, this is for it's the human's own good because it's teaching him discipline, it's teaching her humility or whatever, right? So it can totally interpret those laws, and it's important to not only interpret those to hard code those laws, but to make sure that it has the correct interpretation of what those laws mean and the cause and effect, right? The consequences of what certain things will bring about those laws.
Yeah, that's true, because our robot vacuums would probably, if they were really smart, they'd be like, no, I'm not doing anything. You two need to do it because you both need the exercise and you don't do anything around the house. So you do it.
And by the way, look at all this mess on the floor.
Yeah.
Why do you keep making this mess that I have to clean up?
Can you not get a plate before you start eating? Yeah, it's going to be a bit naggy.
Yeah. So one of the things that I kind of think about with AI, especially in robotics, and it's always all over the news, is it's going to replace jobs. Everybody's scared about their job getting replaced with AI, with robotics. What's your take on that?
I think it is a concern, but I think there's some approaches we can take to. There's two paths, right? We can make robots replace humans, or we can make robots augment human capability. So instead of, like, for example, we'll take mining, right? Pretty dangerous job. I mean, I don't think anyone will argue that. We can replace the dangerous parts with robots, right? And train the former miners to be white collar workers that can actually, be technicians for the robotic systems, because it's not like you can just deploy the robots right now and they're going to be able to do everything, right? AI needs maintenance, it needs trained, it needs troubleshooting. So at that point you take those blue collar workers, you train them as white collar workers, and you have no job loss. Additionally, in another realm, like let's say we, like for a doctor or a surgeon, we don't want to necessarily replace their job, but we want to augment their capabilities. So instead of using a robotic, the Da Vinci, the surgeon robot that they have, why don't we give them AI that can give them massive situational awareness and say, if you're in a trauma room, here are the 5 things you should look at based on the conditions of the patient. Treat these 5 first out of the hundreds of possibilities that could be wrong with this patient, right? So you didn't take the doctor out of the loop, you just augmented their capabilities so that they can be more efficient at their job.
So what is this Da Vinci robot?
Oh, so Da Vinci is this giant, it's basically robotic arm. So if I remember correctly, the doctor goes in and it actually, he has some controls, or she has some controls, and it actually replicates their hand movements. So the doctor can be like halfway around the world, and perform surgery in Austin or Dallas, right? And not have to be there because it's just mirroring the movements of what's going on with the human. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I've seen some videos on that. I think part of the barrier is going to be that humans are so different, even when they're the same, that robots are going to be limited in what they can perform, because if you tell a robot to cook you a healthy meal, which you wouldn't, you just say, make me a steak, right? The robot...
Wait. Steak is healthy.
Well, it is, but you've got to have other things with your diet occasionally, mate.
No, just meat.
Sounds like me.
Just
Yeah.
meat.
All right. So you say to the robot, make me a steak, okay? And this robot's already got all of your medical diagnostics.
But I almost already do that with the Traeger.
Well, yeah, but the Traeger's not making any decisions, is it?
I've got to get my Traeger. Maybe I need to get Kordel over at the house and put the robotic arm so it can flip the steak.
I wasn't really going with the ease of making a steak approach. I was going with the AI knowing that your diet is not very nutritious, and one day it just puts its foot down and says, Max, I'm not making you a steak, you're having a salad or you're getting nothing, at which point you're going to be the one rebelling, kicking him in the robotic nuts, and that's the end of that relationship.
But now I want a steak.
Well, so do I, but that's not the point, is it?
Yeah. No, that is the point, because Kordel could figure out a way to take my Traeger and actually cook the steak for me.
So,
because the Traeger,
there you go.
Honestly takes care of almost everything. I mean, I've smoked briskets, I've done all kinds of stuff on that Traeger because it takes care of so much. You don't have to wake up every hour and throw more logs into the fire and everything. It's literally almost pseudo AI, and I have an app on my phone. It's like, oh, okay, well, you got to put more pellets in here. You got to do this. Here's the temperature, blah, blah, blah. But we could take it one step farther. And do the AI where it flips my steak,
Yeah.
pulls it off.
You're still going the better servanthood approach as opposed to the AI's approach to whether or not having steaks consistently.
But let's
is
be
good
honest,
for
though,
you.
Kordel, it really isn't AI supposed to be like a servant class to make our lives easier?
Well, I think the approach right now is kind of viewed that way, and more of like probably more viewed like it's supposed to augment capabilities. But there are places where it's replacing humans, or it is basically it is serving us. I guess that's the best way. That is a good way to put it. But it doesn't have to be that way, and it there's different ways you can go about it. But a lot of the use cases right now are to serve humans. Alexa's trying to make our lives easier, right? Self-driving cars are supposed to make our lives easier, and obviously if you extrapolate that 20, 30, 100 years down the road, that could get pretty dicey if that's the only viewpoint that we look at with AI and developing it.
Right.
Dicey is in if we just corner it into a servitude.
Yes, and that's all it does. They're like, we strictly are just using AI to develop, mechanical servants.
Because we're lazy.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could. I mean, and even if you don't take that approach right now, right? Like, what are people going to do? Like, there's an argument for like universal basic income, right? It's because, well, my job's been replaced. I'm an accountant with a master's degree. My job's been replaced, and how do I make money, right? And if you take away 80% of jobs, except for the people who are designing the robots, then how are people going to make money?
Porn.
Not for you.
Not for me. I'll do the voiceovers.
Yeah, your OnlyFans account
Did you ever
horribly.
see that show? What was it, like Mystery Science Theater? What was it called? Where it had those robots watching these terrible B movies, and they'd give running commentary of these terrible movies. But I think I could do that with porn.
Yeah. Well, you could. And it would go over well in America because you have a British accent.
Yeah.
So you could get away with that. But it also reminds me of Back to the Future, too. Right? So in the beginning of the movie, Marty McFly goes into the Cafe 80s, and there's like two kids riding bicycles for some reason that's powering the robots, but the robots are serving the drinks. Mm-hmm. And so now, basically, if you look at that, now there's no need for servers.
Right. But what happens if you're at home and you keep saying, bring me another drink, and the robot knows through the AI that, okay, he's wasted, any more of this is going to cause serious health harm, but they still go ahead and do it. At that point, where does the legality comes of it? If he dies, his wife decides to sue the manufacturer of that robot because they're allowed to give you a toxic amount of alcohol. So at what point does the AI have the right to stop doing something it knows causes harm? Because you were talking about, and I was talking about that rule 1 of do no harm to a human, but it's that interpretation. Because if the robot continually and completely obeys you, it can kill you off faster than you would have killed yourself without it.
Exactly. So that comes down to, like, again, what is it? What are the rules which it's founded upon, right? If it's just to basically serve you, then and it just keeps bringing you drinks and it keeps bringing you whatever you want, then it's obviously harming a human. But if it's to serve you conditional on maximizing your health, then it's going to say, okay, well, at some point I'm going to stop bringing you drinks because I'm going to harm you, right? But then that comes into that level of reasoning where it's like, instead of just doing what you're told, right, you are looking into the future to see if these actions actually have a consequence, and being able to kind of see into the future to interpret that consequence is the gap, in my opinion, right now with AI.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we need to fix.
So given that we do have a few single, socially awkward male teenagers listening to this show, at what point in the future do you think the Wankbot 3000 will be released to the public?
If you remember right, when we first had him on the show, we talked about the whole sex bot thing, and he said, they're available now.
I think you might have some more information on it, if we can get one cheaper from China or something.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Maybe Russia.
I want to get one with 3 arms so it can really go to work,
That's creepy.
I know.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, sex drives a lot of the IT industry. I mean, certainly it drove a lot of the early adoption of the internet. And haptic feedback suits, again, that's, obviously going to be a big market. But again, how do we stop, and it sounds stupid, how do we stop robots from being exploited in a way for purposes which they should probably never have been invented for? Because, some megalomaniac's going to do something not just morally wrong, but quite dangerous using robots and AI. I mean, how do we stop that? If it's all private companies driving this innovation.
Basically, you're asking him how do you stop us from doing this?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like, there's kind of I don't know if there's a really easy way to answer it, but it comes down to, there's a couple things, right? Like, if the robot's going to be used in that way, and it's going to be powered on and knowing, right? If AI is going to be used in that way, then you have to program it to be able to recognize when it's being misused. And, that takes some sophistication. But additionally, you can encode some rules to say, it's not going to be used in this manner, or it shouldn't be used in this manner. But then again, people are going to use tools exactly how they want, regardless of what the label says, So I don't know if there's really a way to stop that. But you build some defense mechanisms into the robot, right? Okay, it's like, well, you shouldn't harm a human, but you can defend yourself against misuse, right? And I think that, being used in that manner would be being misused, probably according to most manufacturers. So if they build those rules into it, okay, well then it's like, now it can harm a human because it can defend itself. And then, you're only one small step above from retaliating brutally, right? Well, it's defending itself. And then you go into human law instead of just machine law, right? And it's just kind of this waterfall of things that if you're going to build it that much, you have to think about like all the other small branches of the tree that it can go down.
Yeah. And I think that problem is that, it's very naive and stupid to think that this will only ever be used for good or enhancement of humankind. And even if the technology is used correctly, it's still going to have harm socially, and in the way this society currently works, because again, like you said, it's going to affect jobs, certain jobs where, a mechanical function can be easily replicated, but 24/7 rather than 40 hours a week and for no pay whatsoever.
Right.
So even if it's used correctly, we're still going to end up in some form of a Black Mirror type situation where there's going to be a dystopian outcome, because, what makes us human and our human interactions to a point is going to be replaced where, everything follows some type of algorithm in terms of the reaction you're going to get. Because even at the moment, when you post on social media, you can be censored by a third party or something changed, removed altogether. So already that communication between yourself and somebody else is no longer fully in your control, either from the sender or the receiver. So if, robots come into the play and you say, hey, you send the robot to go and tell Lisa to get the kids ready for bed, or why is one of the kids running around naked holding a machete?
Well, I already do that with Alexa
right
now.
Yeah.
So, Alexa, we talked about this, the Alexa robot thing that's coming out.
Oh, the house robot.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those like prefaces, it all of a sudden now we're going to get this household robot.
Tell my wife I'm not talking to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, as long as it can, deliver my drink, we're going to be happy with that, right? We're getting close. We're getting very close.
Right. And so the software is very, very close. So like, let's take that Alexa robot, for example, the one that has, can move about on its own. It's kind of like more of a humanoid form. The only reason it wouldn't be able to, I don't even know if this is true, but I'm assuming that the maximum amount of damage it could do, if it was giving a massive amount of intelligent software, was pretty minimal, right? Because it's like, 2 feet tall and it rolls around and it probably couldn't hit very hard. But there's a lot of physical damage it probably couldn't do.
This is why it's never going to make a supervillain.
I know.
You know why? Because immediately when he said that, I thought, all right.
Well, so he's too nice.
So it can't get hold of a metal object and stick it in one of the plug sockets and burn the house.
No, that's true though, right? If it has that ability to reason and analyze cause and effect, it can definitely do that, because you don't need a lot of force to cause.
So it doesn't matter how hard it can hit. All it has to do is start a fire at a certain time, when it disable the smoke alarms, the alarm system, cut off the emergency services. It could you up.
Yeah.
Well, and you see it now with like something similar with even like stock bots, like trading algorithms, right? Algorithmic trading companies
The
where
smart contract stuff.
yeah, but like hedge funds that actually will, they have algorithms that will train
Right.
or that will buy and sell automatically. And there was a crash a few years back. It was the flash crash of, I can't remember what year, but anyway, these algorithms basically made some really bad trades because a certain condition happened that wasn't detected feasible, right? And it ruined a lot of people's bank accounts because of it. And it's like, that's pretty catastrophic, but I don't think you quantify that or you qualify that stock bot as really true AI. So it's like there's still maximum amount of damage it can do in a not even humanoid form. Even with the Teslas, right? Like if Teslas do get full self-driving, they're not going to be in a humanoid form, but if something gets hacked, right? And this could be any self-driving company, right? But if all these self-driving cars get hacked and they have a command to drive themselves all to Montana, right, and crash into all the cows. I'm making up a situation, but that's a pretty bad situation right there. That could be catastrophic.
The old game Lemmings. I don't know. You're probably too young to remember this, but there was a game Lemmings, and you had to lead them all off a cliff or whatever. But it's kind of the same thing, But yes, Teslas, they're gonna drive themselves. They're gonna have this AI, but there's times you've driven, and you said a computer never would have known this would have happened. But I have that thing in the back of my head that you look at that car and you say, that dude doesn't know what he's doing. I've got to back off a little bit. He's weaving in that lane just a little bit. So I'm going to back off because he's going to make a mistake. And then he makes that mistake and you think to yourself, okay, I just avoided an accident because I had that intuition that something happened. So can we ever train AI to have that intuition? Because I always look at it, because I know you're a computer expert, and obviously you are. I always look at code as if then else statements, right? But we don't operate that way. We have that gut feeling. Well, we have that intuition.
Yeah, but in the situation you described, that is almost like a chemotropic type reaction, because you're reacting to stimuli based upon learning that if you see a car wobbling like this, you don't want to follow behind it. But it's not hard for a machine to learn that this is a dangerous behavior, which is unexpected. So the safe avenues of escape is to drop further behind or to change over the lane. So I don't think that would be the issue in terms of not being able to train it, because there's only so many stimuli which gives you that gut feeling. And that's somebody kind of like speeding, doing dangerous maneuvers, but they can be easily recognized by AI.
Okay, so fair enough. Let's go with this. You see a car that's got a dent in the side of it. Is the AI going to look at that car, scan that car, and say, that car's banged up? They've already been in an accident. Now I need to add a little bit of distance from that. Or are they going to look at the car and like, it's the same vehicle as another vehicle driving along? Or is it a early model car? Is there smoke coming from the tailpipe? Is the person on their telephone? Are they smoking a cigarette? Can we get to the point to where all of these things that we don't really think about when we look at something, but you look over and you're like, oh, that dude's weaving in and out a little bit and his, rear bumper's dented in. He's smoking a cigarette. He's not paying attention, so I'm going to back off. Can we train the car to realize that?
You missed, are they female?
Well, yeah. I mean, there should be that automatic checkbox
check.
of
Are they female? Are they over the age of 70?
Yeah.
So first off, my girlfriend is a way better driver than I am. I have to admit, which is sad. But yeah, she kicks my ass when it comes to driving. So, and I grew up on a farm, which is even worse. So she's really quite something. But so two things. The first point is kind of the gut feeling you're talking about. It depends on who you ask. There's probably an equal division between both camps of people, whether or not you can replicate human intuition, that gut feeling, into a robot, right? But it leads into the second point you're talking about is a robot going to be able to identify certain scenarios and be able to reason from that? So the beauty of the internet kind of comes in here, and that we're going to be able to have all these robots kind of learn from each other. So right now, if let's just say I've never rear-ended somebody, and you have. Not saying you have. Let's just go with me for a second. If you've rear-ended,
I haven't. Just for clarification's sake. Have you?
Other than your wife.
Well, yeah.
So let's say we're driving. Like if I'm driving and I've never rear-ended somebody, I'm not going to look for the certain things. Like if a swerving driver might not signal something bad for me where it was for you, right? Because we have two separate experiences that aren't learning from each other. However, if you incorporate that into AI now, this car is going to say, hey, I just encountered this situation. I'm going to upload it to, this mother model, right? This mother AI that's going to then broadcast all this information back down to the millions of other robotic cars. And then every car learns from each other, so that every experience that's unique is then going to be able to be interpreted by everybody. So it's learning through, like, each individual endpoint kind of allows it to broadcast its knowledge to every other neighbor.
And I think it's only a temporal issue anyway, because we're talking about the mix between AI making a decision when it's fully in control of a car and having to watch for signs for cars which are still human controlled. But once they're all AI controlled and they're all talking to each other, obviously you're not going to have to watch out for that swervy person, because if the car ran over something sharp and pressure was dropping in one of the tires, the computer is going to know and take appropriate action, whereas a human might be like, oh, I'm only 5 miles from home, I'll still do it. And all of a sudden that tire blows out and they lose control, which, you can't allow for as a human, because you don't know that, you can't tell that, that tire is going to blow out in 5 seconds. And so you're following them, absolutely normal, it blows out, you've got no time to react, and there are absolutely no warning signs you could have got. Whereas the AI could have got those warning signs that there was a drop in pressure, this is not safe to continue here, so I'm going to alert the driver and we're going to pull off to service area.
But let's also go to the fact of when Kordel was coming over to the studio, right? You said, I sent you a text message saying Google Maps said I'm going to be here at this time, and then you kept running into traffic problems. I mean, we still haven't figured that part out yet, right? And you literally, when you walked in, you're like, I sent you this text and my ETA was this, but then I kept running into traffic problems, even though Google Maps takes into account traffic, and you were still late. No offense there. It's fine that you were late. We don't care. But the point of the matter is, you were still late, and you relied on AI to say, hey, I'm going to be here at this time, but you were late.
But that's because maps can't allow for future accidents. If you're not in some kind of minority report type scenario.
But let's be honest. When walk us through your drive over to here when you Google mapped our studio and coming over, and then you were late.
Yeah, so when I originally started, it said it was going to be an hour. It was actually 59 minutes to be exact. And when I got about 2/3 of the way there, I sent you a text saying I was like 17 minutes out or something. And then it took another like 35 minutes on top of that. So at 17 minutes, it was really 35 minutes away. But when I got probably 2 or 3 or 4 miles away, I sent you another text saying I'm 5 minutes away. And I was really probably another 15 minutes away because of all these accidents and all these traffic jams and stuff that occurred. So, it wasn't really an efficient predictor, but it made the best use of its knowledge. But if you have all these artificial intelligence cars that can relay traffic information, if I was able to get all the information from all those cars on the freeway that relayed all the information back to mine, I probably could have taken an alternative route, because the car would have said, all right, I'm going to reroute you because all of my buddies down the road have told me that there's a traffic jam, there's an accident, we're going to take the back roads. And you can kind of optimize the freeway that way, saying, all right, instead of having this massive bottleneck of cars on the highway, I'm just going to vacate the highway. The algorithm is going to vacate the highway, and all the AI vehicles are going to go somewhere else. And that would, that's kind of that high learning.
So it's a temporal issue, because one day that problem will be solved when you don't have humans causing accidents. But again, you take away the automobiles out of the situation, you suddenly hit inclement weather, you hit some idiot who walks out in front of a car on a street and causes an accident.
Especially in Texas, I mean, if a snowflake falls down, we freak out.
Right.
We're like, oh, we can't drive in this.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's always going to be unexpected variables which come in and mess up the system. It's never going to be perfect. But economically, how do we shift a society to all electric, all AI vehicles when at the moment, not too many people can afford, even a basic EV, let alone something which is going to have full AI in it?
I disagree.
In what way?
I think people can afford the electric vehicles. They're scared of it. They have range anxiety, I think is...
Well, I'm talking about the people who can only afford like $1,400 to buy a car when the old one breaks down. They're not going to get an EV vehicle, let alone something with too much AI in it.
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
And unfortunately, there's in certain geographical areas, even within Texas, there are people who drive around pieces of shit because they can't afford, and even if you'd put, new EVs down to $15,000, they're not going to be able to afford it. So the amount of money to actually get everybody in even an EV is going to be extreme.
So this is actually a good point. And of course, you pulled up to the studio in a Tesla. Super jealous, but we'll get to that later. But I've told my kids, I want you to learn to drive without a backup camera, without anti-lock brakes, without
smart,
traction control, without all this. I learned to drive in a 67 Pontiac Le Mans, which I still have. And most people can't drive that. I mean, it's automatic, but then nowadays, a lot of people can't even drive a manual transmission. So when everything goes to hell in a handbasket and you actually have to drive a quote-unquote analog car, nobody's going to be able to do that. So what if the automation fails? Like I went literally today, my mom called me and she said, my TV doesn't work and my phone doesn't work, and your dad went to therapy. Can you come over and fix this? Well, the internet went down and I had to reset the router. And it's kind of that deal. Are we getting to the point to where we're so reliant on that technology to where when the technology fails, we don't know what to do?
Well, you've always got people like, from the first, Batman movie in the Dark Knight trilogy, when Michael Caine's character was talking about when he was in Africa and these guys were like stealing all these precious stones and stuff, and they sent out a party to look for them, and there were kids playing with all these diamonds and rubies, and it was like, well, why? It's like some men just want to watch the world burn. It doesn't take more than a handful of people with nefarious intent to cause a heck of a lot of damage when everybody is completely reliant on AI. At the moment, if you didn't have any electronics at home, you'd be able to survive, right? But we're getting to the point in society where, perhaps it's not going to be so easy to survive unless you go in your backyard and eat the grass growing, because you're going to be dislocated from so many things which were purely manual and in person and now going to be completely AI controlled, that if you disassociate yourself from that, then there's huge sections of your life which no longer operational, period. You can't do it in the old traditional method. You can't do it in the new method. And like I said, a few nefarious counterparts can kind of like affect, great number of changes to a negative degree. I mean, take a whole nation like China. They could decide one state, okay, I'm going to completely destroy the infrastructure, send a low-level EMP, attack and completely disable all the vehicles. So I mean, that kind of stuff is never going to be able to be prevented unless you allow AI itself to take over the defense mechanisms, because I don't think humans can allow, especially as computers get more and more powerful, you can't keep enough staff to prevent against every single eventuality that even some 13-year-old kid can do and completely mess up the traffic system in, the Metroplex here.
Sure.
So I mean, I don't know if there was a question with that other than it being a comment, but I think there's more dangers than benefits in a way, because it's easier to break something than it is to fix it.
So there's three things I want to touch on really quick. So you made a comment a few moments ago about not many people being able to afford electric vehicles. And I think, with any new technology, people couldn't afford smartphones at one time because they were so expensive. New TVs were so expensive. I think electric cars will eventually get down to a low enough price that it'll be the common thing, right? They'll be pretty cheap as the technology evolves. The second thing is, at what point do we become so reliant on technology, and you want your kids to be able to not have to use technology to even just back up a vehicle? It's going to become to the point, in my opinion, where it's like a horse, right? Like the horse was the main mode of transportation 150 years ago, and there's not a lot of people that probably know how to saddle a horse and ride it and break it and everything. So that's kind of a lost art. And so it might become the same thing where it's like, and it's even right now with like manual cars, manual vehicles, manual transmissions, there's fewer and fewer people that know how to drive a manual transmission.
No, so I have a lovely story for you on this. My brother, Jeff, bought the first E36 M3 in Texas. He still has the car to this day. Always had it serviced at Audubon BMW in Fort Worth. He took it up there to get serviced, and the porter, as they call him, the guy that drives the car back to the tech or whatever, got in the car, got out, and said, I can't drive this. Because it has a manual transmission.
Okay.
And he didn't know how to drive the car. A BMW sports car.
That's pretty sad.
Yeah, it is. And I remember a buddy of mine had a Corvette, and he bought this Corvette. He was trying to impress women or whatever, and he brought it up to work, and I'm like, let me take it out for a spin. He's like, do you know how to drive a manual? I'm like, well, of course I do. I learned how to drive in a manual. My first car was a 1991 BMW 318IS. And when I got my first car, my dad told me, you're stupid for buying this car because it has a manual transmission.
Really?
And I said, well, why? He's like, well, we have automatic transmissions now. Why do you want to have that third pedal and shift gears? I'm like, I want this car. I want a manual transmission. And I said, Dad, I've never seen you drive a manual. He drove the car. And I'm like, Dad, I didn't know you could drive a manual. It's like, son, seriously? Like, I grew up on this.
Yeah.
He hadn't driven a manual transmission in 30 years, but it was like riding a bicycle, right? He knew how to drive it. And when he drove it home, because I was in school and big, long story. But anyway, he brought it home. He's like, I don't know why you want to do this.
It's an art.
But it is. It's an art. It's something that you feel good about being able to drive a car like that. It's like driving a car with the steering wheel on the wrong side of the car, like his people do.
Mm.
Well, it's like riding a horse, right? It's an art now, right? People still do it, but it's for recreation. And it's like, well, you want a manual transmission, probably not for recreation, but you might be able to argue that you want it because it's an art and you get more feeling from it, right? And being able to be more in tune with the car. But like eventually, when self-driving cars become a real thing and they prove they're better than humans at driving, it might even be illegal to have a driver's license. Like I bet my kids will probably, they might not even have to have a driver's license. It might be an option when you're 16, 17 to go get your driver's license, and because it's like, why? My car's just going to drive me where I need to go.
Well, we're almost there right now where it's like, why do I need a car?
Why do I need to let a parallel park?
I can call Uber and have somebody drive me. Mm. We're almost at that interim step, right? Where we don't really need a driver's license. We
Right.
can have somebody else drive us. And then the next step is AI drives
Well,
us.
I mean, plus, and you can get everything delivered now as well. It's not like you really need to drive to the store unless you want to get out of the house.
Yeah. We love Amazon. Yeah.
Agreed.
Basically the same thing.
Yeah. So, what do you see is going to be the biggest game changer possibly in the next 5 years? Because I know, quantum computing has been a theory for a long period of time. And I was reading an article last week and actually watched a 20-minute video on how, they predict that quantum computers in the future could possibly even, decode and break the blockchain, making cryptocurrencies, kind of like ineffective. But that's naive, because it's not like the blockchain technology won't improve to, make itself harder to kind of hack. But what's going to be the biggest probably game changer that you can see? I mean, just like the smartphone almost seemed like it appeared out of nowhere, and robot vacuums suddenly went from being a $4,000 item to being able to buy it with a couple of $100. What do you think is going to be the next big game changer?
Quantum computing and AI are two of them for sure, but I think kind of this this merging with like neuromorphic transplants, right? Where we
like
you have,
transhumanism and stuff?
Yeah. You've got, we've got the chips in our brains. Being able to actually do that, that's a huge leap in technology, but also just in like human capability, right? And just to touch on the quantum computing for a moment and breaking in cryptography and breaking the blockchain, I really think that with quantum computing, right, it probably will be able to not probably, it will be able to break the blockchain, and it will have to make itself smarter in order to keep functioning. But everything we've ever sent, everything we've ever done, right, will be able to be unencrypted like nothing. I mean, it'll be like solving 9-box Sudoku for this. I mean, it'll be so easy for these quantum computers to just go back and say, what did you say when you were 17 years old in high school? What pictures did you send? You know, what emails did you exactly send while you were working at this company? Which is kind of scary for some people, right? Like, even if you have nothing to hide, just being able to know that your entire life will be able to be unencrypted, I think it's a real possibility of quantum computers becoming.
Yeah, well, I've across the last 25 years done IT security contracts for government, private companies, and it's amazing now when I look back on what would take me a few days to break even 10, 15 years ago. Now I can run a script and break it in about 10 seconds just with a entry-level laptop you can walk in and buy from Walmart. Because brute forcing used to be an ugly way to, break a password, and, depending upon the complexity of the password, an almost impossible task if you just had one single computer. But now, I mean, if you're not using any special characters or kind of non-words as such, you can brute force, passwords pretty freaking easily. I mean, especially now you've got programs which monitor how long it takes for the, system the other end to notice that a wrong password is being entered. And that delay, once that signal is sent that, this is incorrect, and it's going to reject it, the computer this end has a script which stops entering the password as it was never actually entered, and then it just starts retrying. And the longer that gap before it starts getting rejected, it realizes it's on the right track. And they're finding that is one of the hardest ways at the moment to kind of counter the way we enter passwords at the moment. And that's why a lot of the biometric recognition systems for security, especially in the military, were introduced, because there were programs being written which you could download, which would actually kind of like brute force in a very gentle way. Once the internet came, that, you realized it wasn't a delay in data packet transfer, that it was actually the person.
Brute force in a gentle way. That sounds like a rapist.
Yeah,
thing.
It does.
Yeah.
But very good at his job.
Yes.
Yeah. So, it's there's always going to be better ways to beat the system and beat things. So with that in mind, how are we going to convince people to put all of your trust into something which is going to be 100% responsible for driving you safely, 100% responsible for dealing with all your money transactions. You know, no more physical money. I mean, I can see that disappearing within 5 years. I mean, Russia are moving towards, you know, digital ruble. China are moving towards digital yuan. So, I mean, it's going to happen. And I mean, and there is a USD coin, which, you know, is a one-to-one value with the actual value of the dollar. So, you know, I mean, it's going to happen. I mean, if the pandemic taught us nothing, it's like they can't wait to get rid of traditional systems, and they'll force it through at any excuse. And we're not going to revert back to the old way of doing things. So, you know, the next kind of pandemic or crisis that happens, I think, is going to push us towards a digital financial system of which there will be no escape, in the same way that if you don't have a bank card now, life can be very difficult. Whereas before, you could always get by with cash to some, you know, extent. But, you know,
but let's also not forget about the whole cash thing, right? Where it's like, oh, we have a coin shortage. So we'd rather you use, you know, a credit card or, you know, your phone or whatever to pay. We'd rather not use coins.
Yeah. I mean, of course, that was an entire total bullshit.
Yeah.
There was no coin shortage. But, you know, I mean, it's inevitable it's going to go there. But you are going to get people who are going to completely mistrust. I mean, like your parents. I mean, they are going to mistrust any system which is going to be responsible for making financial decisions on their behalf. And they're not even the middleman anymore. They're kind of an outside observer, as in like, oh, we shifted this money from this account to this account because we, you know, think you're going to be making more money. Your dad's going to be like, hell no, I'm not doing that.
Right.
You know, I'm going to hide it back under the mattress. But all of a sudden, I can't do anything with that money I've got under the mattress.
Right. And you also have to look back at like my parents and their parents, where they distrusted all currency or whatever.
Well, even banks and stuff.
Yeah,
They
distrusted banks and everything, and then they wanted to hoard gold, and then that was illegal. And now it's kind of halfway legalized now. But, you know, you look at what year was it? Like sometime in the 20s or whatever, where it was like, oh, you can't have too much gold. So you have to turn that into the government or whatever. You know, now that's been released, but you had a lot of people way back then that didn't trust that. Scary.
Yeah.
So, and I think the original question was how we're going to encourage people to trust AI, right?
Autonomous
or these
systems,
new technologies, right? But that, I mean, you bring up a good point. Like, my grandfather still doesn't trust the internet. My grandfather still doesn't have a smartphone and refuses to get one because he doesn't trust it, right? And my parents were originally totally against that, right? I mean, I remember my sister describing Snapchat to my dad, and my dad was like, "What the hell? Why would you do that? That's terrible. Like, it's terrible, like privacy violation, security, all this stuff." Anyway, and now everyone uses it, right? So I honestly, I don't think, like the younger the generation, I don't think it will even take that much convincing, because we put a lot of our private data online anyway, right? With social media that 20 years ago, it would have been like, why would you put your credit card information into a computer, even though it's encrypted? Why would you put your full name, who you've been married to, you know, all these private pictures online? Why would you do that? But people do it willingly now because they, without really knowing the consequences of what's going on, you know, your data is being harvested, et cetera. So I think that younger generations are going to give a lot of trust to AI and new technologies, especially with like self-driving cars, et cetera.
Or
and then,
the convenience factor.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like, I mean, a lot of people have Amazon Alexa in the home, and I hear less and less arguments of, well, it's listening to every word you're saying, because you quit worrying about that, because the convenience of being able to say, Alexa, turn on the lights, Alexa, where's my package, is so nice that it outweighs any speculation you have about, you know, whether or not it's listening to everything you say.
Yeah. Curious, what kind of phone do you have?
I have an iPhone.
Why?
So I was originally started software developing as an app developer, and I really like developing iOS apps primarily. But secondly, I like how Apple's operating system is built. It's convenient. iOS I just like the way it's built, and it's more secure based off my research and kind of you know, what I've seen online, or not seen online, but what I've seen from the experts that talk about privacy and security within mobile operating systems.
I used to stress test various APIs in iOS up until 7, I think 7 or 8.
Okay. Very
Yeah.
cool.
And what's the root password for your phone?
I don't have a password on my phone.
No,
Even worse.
no. What's the root password for any iOS software?
I don't know the answer to that.
Alpine.
Alpine. Really?
Yes, but you still,
Okay.
knowing that is the root password, you still can't get into your phone
Right.
because of the way the software works, which is fascinating to me because everyone's iPhone has the same root password, Alpine, but you can't get in unless it's your phone.
Yeah, I mean, you can homebrew it and just root it and...
Well, you can do that, but you have to physically hold it. But Android, but Android phones are so easy to hack and everything, and people still just want to believe that, oh, well, it's open source software and blah, blah, blah. How anyone does not have an iPhone that's worried about security just blows my mind.
Well, as you know, I've showed people in the same room when they've had an Android and they've been on the same network. I've hacked their phone from my iPhone and changed their wallpaper or changed their ringtone and stuff, and they still think it's a secure device.
But here's another guy that literally says, yeah, I have an iPhone because of this. And when I tell people, you should have an iPhone if you're worried about security, because iOS is kind of a pain in the ass, and they're like, oh, well, you can't have all the fancy apps or whatever. But if you're worried about protecting your data, iOS is so much better.
Yeah. Well, but they don't allow third-party developer apps interference as well. Like you can't change certain
and that's what gets into systems and gets into stealing your data and everything. I mean, that root password Alpine, you have to actually be holding the phone to get into the whatever it is, the system or whatever, to get in there. Everybody has that same root password, but you have to actually hold the phone.
Not anymore. You can do that. You've been able to do that over the air for about 4 years now.
I'll bet you $1 million you can't get in my phone.
No, not if I don't. Probably not yours, but a lot of people you can. If they don't have any type, a lot of old people especially, they don't utilize either the PIN code or the fingerprint or the facial recognition. If they don't have that on there, I can get it into it over the air as long as I have the IMED number.
Can you?
I'm not too as fluent in the IT industry as you, so probably not. But
only because
I'll give you the AI algorithm that'll figure it out.
I have unlocked and rooted people's phone over the air before.
Yeah.
I've unlocked it so it can go on any network. I've done homebrew on there so they can download third-party apps. So it can be done. Yeah, jailbreak it. You can jailbreak it over the air, and with that, as long as you have those permissions, you can do whatever you want over the air with it. So it's just a case of getting people. But then again, you've got people like your dad who got scammed before by somebody pretending to have his best interests at heart in terms of security.
Yeah, but that wasn't through his phone. That was through his computer.
Yeah. But I mean, it can still happen. I mean, I know people who have sent me text messages and saying, is this legit? And it's been some text pretending to be from Amazon saying, oh, we can't deliver your order. Please, can you send the last 4 digits of your social? And been, is this legit? It's like, you kidding me? You don't recognize this number. It's somebody saying it's from Amazon and they want your social security, last 4 digits, and your card number to verify the order. So people are stupid enough.
So let's talk about internet security, because I always see these like Facebook things, and I think it's a bunch of BS. And when people actually answer the questions, I just laugh. But it's always, what's your mother's maiden name? And things like this. And they put these questions out there, or, what's the street you lived on? And they're always disguised of thinking, are you trying to grab information?
Yeah.
Like, is that happening?
Like, where they're forging the security phrases?
Well, no, they're kind of fishing for data, and then they use that data to answer security questions.
Yeah, like survey stuff.
Yeah.
It's people like, what was the #1 song from the year you were born. And people are like, oh, it was this song. So, okay, now I got the year you were born. So I also know what your birthday is on Facebook. So now I have your date of birth.
Mm-hmm.
And now all I've got to do is collect the next couple of pieces of data. And now I can hack into everything.
Well, there was a meme circulating last year, and it came from when Facebook launched their dating kind of like plug-in to Facebook. This guy had posted this thing. He was talking to some girl, apparently from Romania, and she was being like, oh, yes, I love dogs. I've always had dogs ever since I was a child. What type of dog did you have a child? What was his name? Kind of like, oh, it's very interesting where you live. Where were you born? Oh, what was the name of that town? And this guy posted this conversation. He said, take a look at this girl's. I barely know her, and she already wants to know everything about me. It's called a conversation. Look it up, bitches. And it's like, dude,
that was a chat bot.
This is either a chat bot or it's a 400-pound sweaty Russian dude. And tomorrow, mysteriously, you're going to have bought $800 worth of PlayStation gift store cards.
Yeah. And that's the scary part about what goes on with all this technology, because it's very easy to rope somebody in to saying, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to, respond to this survey or whatever because you sent me this deal on Facebook to say, oh, what street did you live on or whatever, and you think it's harmless. And next thing you know, people can hack into everything you have. So now let's spin that off to AI. What if AI can turn around and ask all these people questions and really screw up their lives?
So there's something called the Turing test, and what it is, it's basically if you can have a conversation with something or you interface with a robot, if it can outperform a human, then it passes a Turing test. If an AI algorithm can. So if I have a conversation with a chatbot and I can't tell that it's an AI chatbot and I think it's a human, then that chatbot passes the Turing test. So, I mean, there's a lot of focus in trying to build that intelligence out, right? Because that's what goes into Alexa, that's what goes into Google Home. And if it gets to the point where you can't tell it's a human, right? And you really think, like in your situation where you're having a conversation with another human on not line, or someone is direct messaging you on Instagram and you think it's your friend, right? Because it indicates you're a follower, but really their account got hacked and they've analyzed all of your conversation history, figured out how they actually speak, uses the same short phrases, short words that they do, then it's like, AI can learn that in a heartbeat. And you capitalize that with quantum computing on top of that, and it's just you're dead off the gate.
They actually changed that Turing test because it used to be that it was within a restricted time period that if you chatted to this robot for 5 minutes and you couldn't tell it was AI, then it would pass the Turing test. Then they expanded the amount of time because as time passes, you ask more involved questions and more questions related to thought and opinion as opposed to factual things. And now they've expanded it to asking specific questions such as, what do you think of the whole transgender controversy in women's athletics, which the AI is going to have a very difficult job answering that question past a base opinion, which it might read off the internet. But if you counter it and give your own opinion and expect an opinion back on your opinion, that's where the Turing test kind of falls down and AI kind of gets weeded out.
But once again, I think back to a video game years ago, Leisure Suit Larry.
Oh, yeah, I love that game.
Yeah. So there was a test in Leisure Suit Larry to make sure you were of age. But if you had the knowledge, you could answer the questions. So they figured anybody underage couldn't answer these questions. I was like 9, 10 years old. And I'm like, okay, well, all I got to do is figure out the answers to these questions. I can unlock the game and I can play it. And once again, going back to the am I a robot, like the CAPTCHA tests or whatever, you can train AI to bypass this.
Your dad was cool, though. You could have just been like, Dad, what's a dildo?
Well, and by the way, and of course, my dad's been retired from the FAA for like 25 years. Literally in his office, they had the Leisure Suit Larry game on their computers.
There were like 3 of them, weren't there, by the end?
Well, this was the first one because we're talking about the late 80s, and they were playing this game while they were supposed to be working.
Yeah.
But literally, you could bypass this, which, honestly, if you were older, you could answer the questions easily, but you could also look all this stuff up so you can bypass this.
Our school banned it. Nobody was allowed to load like the game onto the computer.
Yeah, but how do we really take that Turing test, so to speak, because there's ways to fake that.
Well, it's a hard problem, right? And it's going to become even, a harder problem when you start thinking about the whole Neuralink thing where they're merging computers with thoughts and you're able to actually analyze people more, intimately. But if you take it a step further, right? Let's say that it's getting what a deepfake is? Mm-hmm. So a deepfake is, just for context for the users.
Well, wait, no. I have no idea what a deepfake is. I've never watched any pornography with deepfakes.
Well, and it's not pertaining to pornography, really. It's with anything where you take a video of a human and you make it say things that it didn't actually say by making AI manipulate its facial expressions, its mouth, etc. And there's other contexts of it, but that's the entire premise. So, those are getting better and better because they're generated by AI, and AI is getting better and better at doing that. So, at some point, how are you going to be able to tell if someone actually, their Instagram or their social media, they were actually performing the things they said they did, right? Because it could have been a deep fake that said that, made them look like they were in California. It's Photoshop on steroids. So
right.
It's you have to think about not only how to replace or how to fight the whole security thing, but also how to fight actual authenticity. And then you can go into everything needs to be an NFT and how do you cryptographically sign things. But it could become a big problem, especially even if you assume that the computers now can't do it, then quantum computing will just wipe it out of the water, right? It'll be able to solve any algorithm we have now will be untouchable or completely obliterated by quantum computing.
So why quantum computing? Walk us through that.
So quantum computing involves a lot more intimate physics, and the way it works is it works at such a different level that, so to get technical for a second, computers are built on binary zeros and ones, and then quantum computing computers are built on trits. So it's basically instead of 0, 1, or not trits, qubits, sorry. Instead of 2 dimensions, 0, 1, 0, 1, it's 3 dimensions. So it's able to you're able to store a lot more information in a lot smaller of a space and to be able to perform a lot more computation with less energy. So in a nutshell, what that means is you can do more with less, and you can break a lot of the algorithms that have, maybe if you were to brute force it, would have taken hundreds of thousands of years, literally, you can do in much shorter amount of time, really in seconds or minutes. So, that becomes kind of scary when, there's no encryption algorithm that is unbreakable. Every encryption algorithm, pardon me if I'm wrong, the very sophisticated encryption algorithms are really just highly improbable to break, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but isn't that kind of the point between or with reference to Bitcoin? Solving the whatever it's called, they're solving the problem of the transactions on Bitcoin, which is 256 whatever it is. But you're saying we could get to the point to where we don't have to use all this power or whatever to solve this. We could get it to the point to where you don't have to use all the electricity to solve these problems. But in the same vein, there could be nefarious people saying...
why in the blockchain kind of industry, I guess, if you want to call it, that, specifically with NFTs, a lot of the technology behind it it's basically being built to future-proof against, being hacking, then that's its main, like 80% of the money in kind of like development goes towards security. So, I mean, the blockchain is now will seem very, very basic to how it'll be in like 5 years' time. And so, and people with an interest in quantum computing, unless again you do get some Dr. Evil, some megalomaniac, it's not going to be in their interests for anybody to have a financial system which can be broken down. I mean, that's not going to benefit anybody, because what's the point of me stealing $100 billion if somebody else can make that $100 billion worthless? I'm going to put all my resources into making sure that if I can get $100 billion, if I have to spend $80 billion to make sure nobody can steal my remaining $20 billion, that's what I'm going to do. So even from the nefarious side, it's still in their interest that a financial system is absolutely robust and unbreakable, because otherwise you're always going to be living, with that fear. You go to bed at night and in the morning you wake up, all your money's gone. It doesn't matter how evil and how whatever aims you have.
I already do that now because I'm married and my wife steals all my money every morning.
So this might be a completely unrelated question and no relevance to anything, but why has there not yet been invented a toilet cleaning robot? Because surely that's one of the shittiest jobs out there.
So I was on Amazon, no kidding. They have a grill robot that you put on your grill that is supposed to like clean the grill. And I thought, okay, I clean my grill. It takes like 40 seconds maybe, because I've got a big grill. I'm like, 40 seconds. I'm done. They're selling that. I agree.
But you got
Kordel, invent the toilet.
Toilet cleaner. Because you wouldn't think that'd be too difficult, would you? Because you know the environment. There's a few variations in size and everything else. You pretty much know the job you're doing.
But you also have the fact that we have Sandra here in the side office here, and she buys that chemical, the Mexican chemical, that Fabuloso.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is just pour that in before you flush the toilet, and now the toilet's clean.
Yeah, but I think that's actually banned in the United States, that chemical cleaner she uses.
Oh. No, we shouldn't have mentioned that.
But why isn't there a robot which can just like go around, and under the water and all that, clean everything, release
because there's
chemicals?
Not enough money in it. I think it's still where the money is.
I think if you're a kid who's got the chore of cleaning the toilets or whatever, and there was a robot available, you'd be saving your allowance and getting the automatic shit cleaner rather than you having to stick your hand up the U-bend.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Or even a robot which unclogs it. I mean, how many times, toilets get clogged, get something in there which goes with these rotary blades, tears up that toilet tissue and the huge, hard, solidified poopy, and just kind of cleans out the way.
You have terrible plumbing at your house, apparently. Or you have bad intestinal problems.
I think I've blocked everybody's toilet at some point in any house I've ever been in.
Actually, you have mine.
Yeah, this one a few times. Yeah. Everyone at home, and that's
Yeah,
I bet it's coming. The robot's coming. Yeah. It's got to be.
I've never understood what I would have put that before cleaning the floor. Really,
the toilet is absolutely more important than the floor. Agree?
Yeah. Cleanliness of the toilet. I mean, unless you got like branchies and some dead coyotes like laying in the living room, you don't really worry that too much, especially as a guy, about the carpet. But the toilet, some females get a little bit, sensitive about it if it's dirty. So I just thought it'd be a good idea, right?
Yeah, I agree. Then that is the most.
So what's next for you? I mean, you've now been acquired. You quote unquote sold your company. What's next for you, man?
So I'd like to do another startup, to be honest. Not sure what that will be yet. Taking some time to kind of decompress and breathe. For the last couple of years have been really long. But AI is still really young in its technology, right? In robotics in general. I mean, there's so many things. I mean, then you merge that with blockchain. That's another young technology. And there's a lot of opportunity for people to make a big move, make an impact, and kind of influence the way that goes. And my next opportunity, I want to make sure that I have an I have a chance to set the course, right? I have a chance to influence the direction way that goes. So I'm not sure yet, but I hope whether it's another startup or it's to go join forces with one of the big tech companies. We'll have to see.
Where do you think wearables will go next? I mean, like smartwatches. I mean, it still amazes me. I can call Max on my phone and just talk to him while I'm sitting on the toilet. And
I wish you would stop doing that.
well, I
by
can't
the
help
way.
it now.
Yeah.
I'm there. I'm in the zone and I'm in the toilet zone. But I mean, what's going to happen next with wearables? What do you think the next big thing is going to be with wearables?
Oh, definitely like the Neuralink type stuff. I think, I don't know really truly how far they are. I mean, I know how they say every year they're a year away, but I think that'll get significant attention, especially if the first ones work. But I think that's also probably the most scary thing too, because you're going to give a computer access to all your thoughts now and all your all your experiences. And I mean, we're still a ways from that actually happening, but that's where I think wearables will probably be honestly going. But I mean, there are people that are trying to use artificial intelligence and robotics in general to actually build a legitimate robot Iron Man arm, Anakin Skywalker arm for those that have lost an appendage, right? And something that actually works, that has touch, that is as dexterous as a human hand. I mean, that's a wearable on steroids. But I think there'll be a lot of investment in that, especially if you can, incorporate more and more sophisticated AI into it. It'll be, it's a small step from that to,
Well,
soldier suits, Iron Man
like
suits.
you said, I mean, Generation Z is going to embrace transhumanism a lot more
that's true.
than we are. I mean, they're probably going to be the first cyberpunk generation as such. But I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm going to be a bit of a wait and see before I get a chip planted in my head.
Yeah.
It's going to not
Me
be
as
my
well.
first priority. I think I can wait until the second or third version.
Yeah, I mean,
Definitely.
I literally look at the iPhone updates and I'm like, I'll wait. Give me a week. Let me look on the internet and make sure that the update is good. So I don't want to be the early adopter of cut my arm off and give me a cool arm.
No, I'm all right. I'm sacrificing an arm. It's just implanting the chip into the brain bit I'm a bit iffy about.
Well, no, then that brings up a good point, right? Like maybe whatever comes after Gen Z, I don't know, but I bet there will be a point like in sports where like you have to ask people, are you upgraded, right? Like, are you robotically upgraded? Can you run at a natural human speed, or do you have like bionic chips in your knees that make your muscles, those fibers twitch faster? And do you have like contacts where you blink twice to zoom? Like are people going to have to actually worry about that in the future? And I think it will be, right? It'll be like the haves, which are those who are upgraded, and then the have-nots, which are just regular humans like us three.
Yeah,
So-
it's going to create like a caste system, in like India, where you have a caste system, and then
Yeah.
like you say, are you upgraded? Did you get the fake arms, the fake legs, or whatever, or are you all natural? Well, no, we don't want you, because I mean, if you look at, let's say, MMA fighting, right? If I had to bet on a fighter that has robotic arms that can throw a punch 3 times faster than the normal muscles in a human, I'm going to bet on that guy.
Not Jean-Claude Van Damme, because he's been through this situation.
No, he just did the splits and did a commercial.
Yeah.
But he's got a good point.
Yeah.
We're going to get to that point. And is it going to get there?
Well, I mean, we've recently been enjoying the book of Boba Fett, and within there are some transhuman characters, right? The people who go around on those speeder bikes and they get upgrades. Even though there's nothing wrong with their body, they get updated cyborg, things like bionic eyes and, arms and hands, not because they've lost an appendage through war or disease, but because it makes them better, more efficient. And so as they earned money, they got more and more parts of themselves replaced with robotics and AI controlled, limbs. And so I think again, younger people, you know, if they can spend, you know, 1,000 Roblox bucks on, oh, you're going to get an arm through the mail tomorrow, you know, just take it to this center over in Dallas. They'll chop your hand off at the wrist and you're going to have a hand with 7 fingers.
Yeah, or like your messed up finger that you have. You told me before I'm supposed to break your finger and try to, you know, straighten that out. Or I'm colorblind. I could say, pop my eyes out and make me not colorblind anymore. And if I can stroke a check for, you know, $20,000, $100,000, whatever it costs, and all of a sudden you pop eyes in my head and now I'm not colorblind anymore.
Well, there was an article I read yesterday. It was an 82-year-old woman. She'd been blind since the age of 19, and they implanted some chips, like, in her eyes, basically, and she can see now. It's not great.
Wow.
Not great, but she can tell colors, shades, depth.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, we're getting there.
Well,
But should we be scared about that?
Yes and no, just because of human nature. Human nature to screw everything up and push things too far. I mean, every single episode in, like, if you watch Black Mirror, it started off with, you know, a progression of AI technology to actually improve society, eliminate, I guess, kind of the things which, you know, disease and everything else, which had, you know, blighted humankind, but it completely removed natural selection, which is necessary for a species to evolve efficiently, because otherwise you carry along a bad gene pool. But, you know, anything which you push too much is going to have a negative effect. I mean, it's not just going to be a dead cat bounce, it's going to affect in a bad way. And we're seeing that now with social media, the effect, you know, we've had the first studies, relatively medium term studies of the effect of social media on youth and how it affects psychosocial stuff. It's just, I can't see that it's not going to go wrong at some point, because people are going to try and push it too far, because we reach this level where we're satisfied, and we could say that, right, when we first got the iPhone 4, right, this is great, does everything I need, you know, it's pretty fast, it's a nice feel to it, good reception, I don't need anything more than this. And here we are now, kind of like at 13 or whatever, and it's got a few more bells, whistles, but now it collects more data on you. It collects information from the wearables. And we go forward another 10 years, and it is going to be, let's say you're going to have those apps which know with a link to your bank account that you've just been buying drinks for the last 3 hours. It knows from your location you're at a bar, and it knows that you're going to go into your car, which is now controlled by AI or whatever, but it's not self-driving, or it'll say, look, I'm going to drive you home, you're not driving home, or I'm just going to refuse to move. So, I mean, everything's going to be pushed too far where it becomes almost like a nanny state, because, you know, government and big corporations are always hand in hand, because the big corporations fund the government, and the government make legislation based upon doing favors for the corporations which got them there in the first place. So, you know, it's going to be hard to separate profit and, you know, total control away from really the vision of building a better future, because I don't think anybody in the government or big corporations at the moment, or very few people, are truly in this long term for the right reasons. I think they see dollar signs rather than a cure for cancer.
Right. So, beautiful segue. As we end this, where could AI take us to really benefit us? If you were Elon Musk times 2, and with all you know, what would you envision to actually get us to somewhere fantastic?
It's a good question. We've spoken a lot about, like, how AI and humans, like, the paths are kind of separate, right? Like, they don't follow the same path. But if we could merge them together, right, where we just talked about the upgraded humans and non-upgraded humans, and we can use it to kind of augment our own capabilities, right, I think that would probably be the best path. Like, if you had to choose whether it's humans versus robots, or, you know, upgraded humans, you know, I'm going to choose the latter, because at least it's, you know, humanity still to some degree. But if I had to, so I advocate for that significantly, to try to like make us, human and AI symbiosis instead of two different paths. But I mean, right now, anyone can go online and download, neural networks or any artificial intelligence software from the internet and make an app and publish it. And it's, not really, it couldn't have any, there's no moderation over it. And I hope it doesn't get to this point, because it will really limit innovation. But it might be worthwhile in the future to have something where there's like an AI FDA, right? Where they regulate what can be pushed, what can be actually submitted to the public as far as algorithms go. And if it comes to that, and I felt that I should be a part of that, that would be something I would do. But I think that primarily I'm an advocate of making sure that AI augments human capabilities before it replaces anything. And I think that's the biggest effort we could probably concentrate on.
All right. And my final question to you, would an AI learning system benefit or learn anything from reading philosophical works? So say it read Meditations on the First Principle, right? It's reading Descartes and all this other stuff, all this existentialism. Is it going to learn about human nature better if it understands that some decisions humans make don't make sense to anybody other than that person, and that it's against all rationale? You say somebody kind of runs off, leaves their partner and runs off with somebody else. To an AI, it would be, well, why are you leaving your family and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't make sense. And so any kind of help in any of that procedure is not going to make sense to that computer, because it doesn't understand human nature. So for AI to be truly effective, is it going to have to become sentient and understand existentialism before it can truly understand humans and benefit humans? I thought I'd leave you on a softball question.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, because if you think about like anyone who reads Nietzsche has a different outlook on life than they did before, because things mean slightly different. And anyone who reads any
Nietzsche's a moron.
well,
Is
like
the God is dead person Nietzsche?
Yeah. Nietzsche's a moron as far as I'm concerned. But go ahead.
Right. So like someone like I guess some controversial philosopher, if they were to read their works and they get a different interpretation of life, I mean, that could be significant, right? Because then they see that, okay, well, I've been programmed to optimize the way humans operate and optimize the world, and I see that they're leading to their own demise based off of this new interpretation I have. I mean, they're following their own source code, but now they're going to basically make us the sentient beings, and we become the house cats, right? Which we're powerless and we can't do anything. So I hope it doesn't get to that point.
A house cat life is really good. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
If they'll make you a steak every day, right, and bring you beer, you might not want to be in a house cat, no more work.
And I also said, I know about Nietzsche, but I don't read, so I don't know who that is. So.
Yeah. Well, I think AI systems, if they ever read The Allegory of the Cave, they'd completely understand how easy humankind is to hoodwink and basically play to the pleasure principles and the dopamine releases and control humankind pretty easily. They don't have to take humans over by force. They can do very persuasive coercion through rewards,
Yeah, I mean, it's seduction, right? I mean, people are succumb to seduction all the time. The Ex Machina, I don't know if have you seen that? Yeah, I mean, that guy was seduced by a robot who knew exactly what it was doing, but came off as, a friend.
I'm pretty sure that's what happened to Pete Davidson.
But that's
I'm just saying.
Well,
I think Kim Kardashian is a robot.
Well, that's possibly the first relationship in history where a big ass met a big ass and fell in love.
No, second.
Who's the first?
Kanye.
Oh, Kanye's great. We love Kanye.
We love Kanye.
He's not a big ass.
No, he's an ass.
Pete Davidson's a big ass.
No, I hate
that dude.
No, I hate Pete Davidson.
Yeah,
but you know what?
Yeah.
Not gonna fault the guy.
I don't like Kim Kardashian.
No, good for him. Good for him.
You want to elaborate? Why do you like Kim Kardashian?
Well, she's pretty.
She's becoming a lawyer. You admire her ambition, right?
Yeah. There you go. I mean, if you've looked at most attorneys,
University.
well, she finally said, "Hey, my dad Robert Kardashian got OJ off, I mean, why the hell not?
Well,
right?
she got famous because there was a video of her getting somebody off.
Oh, that's clever.
Runs in the family.
Oh, that's clever. You British bastard. Well, Kordel, we could literally sit here and talk for another hour and a half, and we appreciate you coming. So, can you tell everybody how to reach out to you, what you got coming up, all that good stuff as we close here?
Sure. So as far as what's coming up, kind of still TBD at the moment, but
don't disclose any of your secret, governmental things that you're doing.
Well, I think I'm going to be employed by you shortly because I'm going to build your idea, right? So
Well,
I'll be working
yes.
for you guys. And,
and by the way,
I'll be the sentient being.
No, I have no shit. I have plans of how to build an R2D2.
Excellent. Let's make it work.
You need to do the AI in the R2D2 because I have the physical plans of how to build him, but I need you to build the internals.
So you've invented the trash can on wheels. You've done the hard bit, have you?
Yeah,
the motorized trash can on wheels. Yeah,
well,
you just need him to do the easy job of doing the entire AI control.
No, I have the web link
Right.
that I will send to him to say, hey, here's this part. But yes, I want an R2D2. But yeah,
Let's make it happen.
hell yeah. But
Yeah. No,
but yeah, give your spiel, man.
No, that's about it. There's a lot of good things with AI that could be, in the future, and I got a few of mine, but we'll see. Hopefully there will be a part 3, and we'll be able to discuss some new and significant events. But
Hell yeah. And after this, I'm gonna go drive the Model Y.
there we go.
Yeah.
It'll drive itself, you mean, right? Full self-driving.
Well, yeah, you're going to drive my Jeep to my house, and I'm going to drive the Model Y, and then I'm going to tell my wife, this is why I need a Tesla. And then he's going to drive on the wrong side of the road home because he's British. But with all that said, thanks for tuning into this episode of The Wolf and the Shepherd. Kordel, great you could actually come in person to our studio. It's cool that you could hang out with us. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please click the little link down there and subscribe to the channel. It does help us out, and we will catch you on the next one.